Okay, you are live.
Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, February 10th, 2025 Board of Supervisors meeting. This meeting is now called to order. Ms. Whitten, will you conduct roll?
Supervisor Lewis.
Present.
Supervisor Day.
Here.
Supervisor McDaniel.
Here.
Supervisor Lyons.
Here.
Chair Ayers.
Here. We will now offer an invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Those attending are not required to participate, but if you'd like to join us, please stand.
Lord, as we prepare for a winter storm, I ask that you will look after those that are out providing safe passage for those that are traveling and our public safety staff that will be out answering calls for assistance. And now I ask that you give us wisdom and guidance that we make good decisions for our county this afternoon. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will hold citizens' comments near the beginning of the meeting. We will do our best to take citizen comment remotely. There are two options for citizens to offer comment. To join by telephone, you may dial in on one of the numbers listed on the county website. Webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press raise hand button on the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you're calling in by telephone. Does staff or board members have any proposed changes to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Harrison, do we have anybody signed up?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No one online either.
Okay, is there anyone out there that would like to address the board? If not, we will move on. Approval of the January 27, 2025 minutes. Has everyone had time to review those? Are there any questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Day? And I vote yes. County financial report. Mr. Harrison?
Yes, ma'am. Before you is a request an approval of a resolution authorizing additional appropriations and the payment of bills. The total amount of bills this period is $409,208.69. And we're requesting an additional appropriation of $8,490 insurance reimbursements for the sheriff's office, some vehicle damage. Attached with your packets are revenues and expense reports in the balance sheet through January 31st. To date, general fund revenues total $40,436,000. Total expenditures total $39,897,042. Difference to date is $538,958. That'll probably start going the other direction until we get our property tax in June. 58% of the fiscal year has passed. Sales tax revenue is at $2,619,534,000, or 59% of the estimated budget. Mill tax is at $1,965,605, or 58%. Our lodgers taxes continues to lag. It's at $944,551, or 51% of the estimated budget. Emissions tax is at $236,767, or 68% of the estimated budget. The Finance Committee has begun working on the FY26 budget. We have a meeting this Thursday, the second of many, I'm sure. One of the things the Commissioner's Office is dealing with some obstacles with the new Vision software, which is going to have a delay on the, again, us evaluations for the real property tax. Though personal property tax, we should have that this week. But given that that's our primary source of revenue, that's that the finance committee and the board as a whole consider the possibility of delaying the first budget meeting, not at this time, but to be flexible, possibly delaying that first budget meetings currently scheduled for February 24th. Because of being our largest source of revenue, that affects your evaluation and decision-making, even at this initial stage of a big chunk of revenue is unknown. And I would just, again, ask for flexibility. We might get it sooner on time, but if not, communicate first, of course, with the finance committee and then the whole board. And that is all I have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Gentlemen. Do you have any insights on the lodging and why that continues to rise?
Yes, ma'am. We were, since we were doing so well with, when we worked on the FY25 budget, we were with sales tax and mills tax doing well and continuing to meet expectations. And generally, lodging tax has followed the same trajectory. We were a little bit optimistic in expecting a similar increase in the lodging tax. So it looks like the lodging has plateaued. So it's not like we're getting a decrease in lodging tax. It's just that it's plateaued and it's underneath our estimated budget. So, but hopefully with new hotels and stuff coming on, that trajectory, that plateau can start climbing or get over that hump.
One thing to add there, have had some discussions in there. Some of the homes that were being Airbnb, VRBO'd are being long-term rented now. So that there's, I don't have data to support that yet. I just know that some of that's happening. So VRBO and Airbnb they collect the fee for us. So if fewer units are being rented and they're more in long term, then that the lodging tax is not collected on that.
There's
Well-
other benefits to that.
Right, there are benefits, of course, for housing, but there also might just be pushing them to other Airbnbs that are not fully rented either. So you wouldn't necessarily expect that Airbnb numbers would go down. Our numbers would go down because some of those went offline. But I guess we'll see.
And one of the spreadsheets that's in your packets that we started doing is we showed month over month revenue for all the sales, lodging, mills, emissions, and cigarette taxes. So you can compare it to the prior years.
Yes, thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the proposed resolution? Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Consideration of request to support Blue Ridge Rising. Mr. Suter.
Yes, Blue Ridge Rising is an initiative of the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation, a nonprofit organization formed to strengthen community partnerships along the Blue Ridge Parkway. It begins, which of course begins in North Carolina and extends all the way to Afton Mountain near Waynesboro. Blue Ridge Rising, and this I believe, and Mr. Brandt will probably correct me if I'm wrong in a second. He's with us this evening. I think this is kind of the mission or vision. I can't remember which one it was, but we'll establish a collective regional vision that celebrates our shared culture, protects our unique natural resources, and strengthens the regional economy. Staff has participated in visioning meetings for this initiative, and Tourism Director Cheryl Wagner is our official local ambassador to this, representing the entire area here. So as a result of Hurricane Helene last year, portions of the parkway were severely damaged, and Blue Ridge Rising is requesting support for funding from the Commonwealth for repairs to also for continued support for this initiative. And I've confirmed that no funding is being requested from the county I included several documents in your package, as well as a link in there to additional information. I did hand out some booklets for you to take a look at. All that information is online, so if you wanted to, you could peruse it online, and we could either, put these out for citizens to pick up or give them back to Mr. Brandt to use elsewhere. And again, it's Kevin Brandt with Blue Ridge Rising is in attendance to share a little bit more information, answer any questions that you may have. And there is a resolution in your package for consideration. And I'll ask him to step forward.
Good evening, Mr. Brandt. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here to speak in front of you about the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation and Blue Ridge Rising. It just so happens that today is the 28th anniversary of the founding of the foundation. And what we have discovered over those years is that it's not just the national park that makes the visitor experience for the 16.7 million people who came to the Parkway last year. It's coming into small communities like here in Lexington or Buena Vista, or all the kind of things that Rockbridge Outdoors has been planning and implementing over the years. One of the things that has been especially appreciated by myself as a former national park superintendent is that since I've was introduced to the county and Rockbridge Outdoors, I've been attending those meetings. And I've got to tell you, out of the 29 counties that touch the Parkway, I think this is the only county that has such a well-developed interest in developing the assets within the county and really connecting to resources beyond your boundary, the Forest Service areas and the national park. So I want to note that. But one of the things that we found is we talked to people in all 29 counties, here 12 here in Virginia, 17 in North Carolina, is that there's a lot of commonality of needs to fully benefit from all those people that are on the Parkway. And if you can imagine, I know you've all been up on the Parkway, but if you were not from this area and your fuel gauge was running on low, or it was the end of the day and you didn't know where to stay, you really would be lost. Your cell phone isn't likely to work in a lot of places up there. And so one of the things that we discovered in talking to the communities is that they needed better wayfinding signage. So we're working with the National Park Service, and we'll continue to work with Rockbridge and all the other counties to develop some kind of signage on the Parkway, directing visitors off the Parkway into the communities. And it's not just for necessities like food or fuel or lodging, but the arts and crafts that are here, the music festivals, and the other activities that are in the communities really make the visitors' experience a lot richer. I hope you will endorse this resolution. We are in the very final stages of applying for a $5.1 million grant from the Appalachian Regional Commission. And I believe Rockbridge County is part of that area, so you'll benefit from that. But there's just a whole host of things that, from marketing, developing night sky tourism. You may recall last year where everybody was going up to the Parkway to observe the Aurora Borealis. And so there's a whole host of things that I think by collaborating between all the counties, we can curate itineraries, whether it's fly fishing or other kind of activities. And I think there's real potential to grow the economic vitality and resilience of communities like here in Rockbridge, but also create a more memorable experience for the people who come to the Blue Ridge Mountains. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Where were you a superintendent at, sir?
The C&O Canal National Historical Park.
What are you hearing from the Department of Interior or the federal government as far as funding and for repairs and upkeep on the Parkway?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What are you hearing from the Department of Interior or the federal government as far as maintenance and upkeep on the Parkway?
Well, I don't work for the National Park Service now, so I don't have any official links, but I do know that the disaster supplemental that was passed at the end of last calendar year will benefit a lot of the damages that occurred from Helene. But there's still a lot of work yet to be done. One of the bills that was passed, I think in 2020, was the Great American Outdoors Act, which provides over a 5-year span about $5 billion for all the national parks, of which the Blue Ridge Parkway is receiving, I think it's about $200 million to take care of deferred maintenance. Now, there's still plenty more to do. At the park that I was at, there was a lot of deferred maintenance as well. But between the supplemental disaster funding and the Great American Outdoors Act, a lot of improvements are being made to the parkway.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Who managed the grant request to ARC for you? Do you know?
We will be receiving the grant, and then we will probably be doing sub-grants to various organizations.
I was just wondering who managed the request. When you asked ARC for the grant, what agency did that? Did you all do that
We
yourself?
did that.
Foundation?
Yeah, our foundation, the nonprofit. And I should add that here in Virginia, we're working with Friends of Southwest Virginia. You may be familiar with them. They do projects up and down the and further west of the parkway, but we do overlap with some of our counties in Southwest Virginia.
May I, before, if anyone was going to make a motion to adopt a resolution, I'd like to make a correction and remove the Botetourt County towns from that and insert our towns and 2 cities. We had used a copy from Botetourt and we just missed that piece. So the third whereas would be including the towns of Glasgow, Goshen and the cities of Buena Vista and Lexington.
So there's no financial request. It's just supporting your agenda.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And how does the grant you're receiving and the funding and all, how is that going to impact the parkway that's in Rockbridge County?
So in total, the Blue Ridge Rising action plan encompasses about $12 million worth of activity. And so that averages out to be about $400,000 per county. Some counties might, receive more, some a little less. Some, I think here in Rockbridge, there are 7 access points onto the parkway, but some counties only have 1. And I think it's Henderson County in North Carolina has none. And so the amount of signage that might go into Henderson will be close to nil, whereas here in Rockbridge and some other counties, it'll be substantially more.
And you'll be able to update us at some period of time with what has been done in Rockbridge?
Yes, sir. Be happy to. And as the county administrator mentioned, Cheryl Wagner is an ambassador. There is one from each county, and they will serve as a 2-way communication tool on every other month kind of basis, and they'll have the ability to help craft the priorities and the kind of specific needs that each county might need.
So if we or any citizens want to have some sort of input, that's who they need to contact.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'll move to adopt a resolution with the changes noted in the towns and cities.
Second.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
And I vote yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Brandt.
Thank you all very much.
2024 audit review from RFC.
Yes, with us today is Sadie Begon with Robinson, Farmers and Cox to go over the FY 2024 audit. There is a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm trying to join the meeting right now so I can share, and it's not letting me on. Oh, you have a copy of it.
We do.
Sure, I'll get started. I'm Sadie Bagoon of Robinson Farmer Cox, the partner that oversees the audit for the county. I'm happy to be here to present the results of the FY24 year-end audit. And I'll give you some highlights from the financial statements from this past fiscal year. First off, I'd just like to congratulate the county on again receiving the Government Finance Officers Award for the Certificate for Achievement and Excellence in Financial Reporting. I believe this is the 10th consecutive year the county's received this award. So each year, we'll work with county staff to get this application submitted, and then the county's report goes through a comprehensive review by a government accountant, and then they're issuing this award based on meeting certain criteria. So it really shows that the county's dedication to excellence in financial reporting. All right, so I'll give you the results of our of the audit for FY24. We've issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. An unmodified opinion is also referred to as a clean opinion. It means we feel the financial statements presented are materially correct and they conform to generally accepted accounting principles. And we have some other reporting objectives for the county's audit. The audit conducted in accordance with government auditing standards required that we take a look at the county's internal controls. And in the course of our audit, if we identify any weaknesses in internal controls, we evaluate those to determine if they're what we call a material weakness or a significant deficiency. I'm happy to report we did not note any material weaknesses during this work. We did identify one weakness in internal controls that we considered to be what we call significant deficiency. So, and that related to the timeliness of some bank reconciliations performed. So there were two major accounts for the county where bank reconciliations were performed, but they weren't completed until January 2025. So June 30 year end bank reconciliation. So once performed, there were no material adjustments that needed to be made to the financial statements as a result. So happy to report that, but obviously, we would encourage those to be completed on a monthly basis, and if issues are identified, remedied swiftly. So do consider that to be a weakness in internal controls. Also, as part of our audit, we're looking at compliance. So compliance with laws, regulations, grants, reporting, including budget compliance, procurement compliance, BRS, reporting compliance. So I'm happy to report that as a result of the audit, we did not report any non-compliance material to the financial statements. And then there's one other area for the county because of the volume of federal awards expended, a single audit is required. So in a single audit, we're looking at internal controls and compliance specific to your major federal grant programs. So as part of our audit, we looked at 4 major programs for FY24, 3 programs at the school board, the Child Nutrition Cluster, the Special Education Cluster, the Education Stabilization Fund, and then 1 federal program administered by the county and could include school funds as well, the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, or ARPA fund. So I'm happy to report as a result of our single audit, we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls over your federal grant activities, and no compliance findings as well. All right, if you're following along in slides,
We don't have the slide.
you don't have slides. They've got
You've
slides.
got, okay, sorry.
I will keep going under the assumption that you can see the slides. I'm at the slide number 7, summary of net position. And I'm sure if you have these printed, the numbers are very small. So I will point out
What does the page look like?
it looks a table with a lot of numbers on it. It's a summary statement of the county's net position at the end of the fiscal year. And so I've included this summary presentation of the government-wide net position for FY 24. So the numbers will include both governmental activities and business type activities. So that's going to include all your governmental funds, the general fund, the capital projects funds, both school and county, as well as the activity of the Blue Ridge Resource Authority, all in a combined total. And these numbers are based on the government-wide financial statements, which are the first two exhibits included in your financial report. These figures are based on full accrual accounting, most like the way that businesses report. The county ended the year with a total net position of about 50.8 million. And that was an increase in net position compared to the prior fiscal year of about $1,086,000. Governmental activities of the county resulted in a slight decrease in net position of $163,000, so a very flat year for governmental activities, while business type activities resulted in an increase in net position of about $1,250,000. I always like to draw attention to, if you're looking into the financial report and would like to see a good executive summary. At the front of the report on pages 4 through 15, there's a narrative document entitled Management's Discussion and Analysis. And this is prepared by the county's management and gives an excellent analysis and sort of overview of why things changed during FY24, what impacted the change. So if you're looking for that type of analysis, that's the best place to go. All right, I'm going to move forward a little bit on slide number 8, which talks about the governmental fund financial highlights. So here I'm talking about the fund financial statements, which begin on page 20 in the financial report. These are prepared on the modified accrual basis of accounting. And we'll focus only on governmental funds. So this will be the combined total for the general fund and the other governmental funds, including the 2 capital projects funds. So these funds ended the year with total fund balance of about 48.3 million. They experienced an increase in fund balance for FY24 at 4.6 million. And at the end of the year, the general fund unassigned fund balance amounted to about 28.1 million. The county carried unrestricted cash and cash equivalents in governmental funds at just under 40 million, at 39.7 million. I have included a chart entitled Fund Balance by Type, Governmental Funds. And this chart just shows how the fund balance for governmental funds has been impacted over the last 5 years. You can see a steady increase, like you're climbing stairs there. With the gray coloring being the unassigned portion of fund balance that's available to meet ongoing expenditures of the county. The purple category there is assigned. So there was an increase in that purple category from FY23 to FY24, and that really relates to ongoing capital projects reported in the school capital projects fund. So some fund balance there constrained for that topic, that purpose. Now on the following slide, I've got another chart. And so while we're conducting the audit, we look at a lot of different types of financial ratios, but one we really like to lean on to kind of evaluate financial health for a locality is this comparison of the unassigned fund balance to that year's general fund expenditures. And here the county has established a policy for calculating this ratio. So here, when I say expenditures, I'm including general fund expenditures plus school operating expenditures to get the total picture. So this year that ratio came to 34.29%. And if you look at the chart, historically, this ratio has resulted anywhere from 30% to 39%. The county has set a goal to not be below 20% with this threshold. So county is well above the established threshold for this ratio and pretty consistent over the 5-year period. The following slide I've provided We're going to kind of dig in on general fund only, revenues and expenditures. So the slide depicts a comparison budget to actual for general fund revenues only. So for FY '24, general fund actual revenues came in under budget by about 401,000. There were several categories where revenues exceeded the budget, namely property taxes, other local taxes, revenue from the use of money and property. That's a big one. Basically interest income, investment income exceeded expectations by about almost $1.2 million. Then the largest category where revenues came in under budget is the federal grant revenue category. And that really has to do with the timing of revenue recognition. So it's important to note when we're looking at a budgetary analysis, the county goes through the year reporting on essentially a cash basis. And then when it's time for the year end close, the accounting consultants are coming in and working with county staff to adjust to the modified accrual basis for reporting. So at year end, there are some revenues that will be deferred because they haven't met revenue recognition. Similarly, there'll be expenditures that are accrued because they've been incurred already. So some budgetary variances at year end are really driven by that change that sort of happens after the fiscal year end has happened, and the accounting consultants are working with the county to adjust to that modified accrual basis. The next slide is the same type of analysis, but on expenditures. So county expenditures for the general fund came in under budget by about $6.6 million. There a lot of categories did come in under budget, public safety, education, and then the biggest one is under community development. And that is similar to revenues. That's driven by the timing of ARPA expenditures and revenues. So budget was there for a significant amount of ARPA revenue, almost $4 million. And based on the timing, it wasn't recognized in FY '24. So that's what accounts for the larger budget variances there. All right, the next slide I have included, I always like to talk about property tax collections. And for FY '24, the total tax levy for the year was about $34,426,000. And of that levy, $31,432,000 was collected during the year of the levy. So we always like to look at this percentage of the levy that's been collected in the year of the levy. And for FY '24, that percentage is 91% of the levy was collected. Now that is down from historical years. It's really hovered between 95, 96% over the last 10 years. And I think that was just driven by later collections of real estate tax. I looked forward 60 days to see what was collected immediately after June 30th. And the collection after June 30th was quite a bit higher. So I think if you added 2 months to this schedule, it would look very similar to the other percentages. Like those revenues did get collected. There was just a bit of a delay right at the end of the fiscal year.
Like last year, didn't we extend the due date because of the state budget being late?
Yes. Yep. So really a timing thing. I don't think it represents the less tax revenues in total are going to be collected for that levy year. It's just a timing issue. All right. The next slide, I have a chart sort of relevant to your conversation from earlier in the meeting. This is only local, other local revenues, other local taxes. And, you know, as you discussed, sales and use tax, lodging tax, and meals tax are the 3 lines at the top of the chart. So sales tax is blue, lodging tax is in the yellow color, meals tax is purple. So you can see those have really been on a consistent upward tick, with the exception lodging tax is upward tick in line with everything else, and then it's sort of flattened out. The other local taxes remaining fairly consistent: consumer utility tax, business license tax, little uptick in business license tax in the last 3 years. And then, of course, the motor vehicle license tax, that changed effective FY '23, going from an every vehicle tax to a new vehicle license fee. So that's what impacted that bottom red line. But it's nice to see, you can kind of see the 10-year trend on that activity. Really depicts economic growth here. All right, I'll talk briefly. I just have one slide on some highlights from the Blue Ridge Resource Authority exhibits that are included in the financial report. These are the business type activities for the county. So the Blue Ridge Resource Authority ended the year with a deficit net position of $2 million, approximately $2,005,427. The overall operating income for the Blue Ridge Resource Authority was a positive $632,000. And then overall, this fund had an increase in net position of $1,250,000. And that's really driven by a decrease in the landfill closure, post-closure liability estimate. So that fund carried cash and cash equivalents that were unrestricted at the end of the year of about 3.5 million, and about 2.6 million was restricted for landfill closure and post-closure. So that covers sort of the highlights from the financial statements that I wanted to go over. We have provided county's management with just a few recommendations in relation to internal controls. We proposed 8 journal entries during the course of our audit, which is a pretty low number for the entire county. And only one of those was considered material. So that's also to be commended. We've worked with the county staff to again submit the annual financial report for the Government Finance Officer Certificate Program. So I hope next year to be back here telling you that the FY '24 report has also met their high expectations for reporting. That's all I have for you, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
I'm not sure if it's a question for you or for Mr. Suter or Ms. Harrison, but the bank reconciliation, is that just where we had a brand new treasurer, brand new commissioner of revenue, and getting used to the functions of their positions?
Yes, I think that is the primary cause. I do know Ms. Weisel has already made some personnel changes in her office. And she's recruiting new staff with more banking experience to help with that. She got some training from Rutherford Moss had come in to help and help show staff things. So she's also one of the things she's implementing, not just on this, but on other topics as well, is cross-training staff so that they're not just limited to their own things. And that's one of the things she's implementing.
Typical too, to have when a newly elected treasurer comes in to have it's a big learning curve coming into that job. So yeah, I think Ashton explained it well.
I know she's caught up on all the accounts but one right now.
Anything else?
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I apologize. I don't know.
Oh, that's okay. We worked it out.
Yeah. So if there's nothing else, is there a motion to accept this report?
So moved.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Day? And I vote yes.
With your formal acceptance, like with all of our past audits, it'll be posted online if anyone from the public asks.
Thank you. Consideration to set a public hearing for personal property tax exemption request by the Virginia Institute of Autism. Mr. Dodd.
The Virginia Institute of Autism, which is also doing business as the Virginia Center for Neurodevelopment, operates a school in Rockbridge County, as you're aware of, that provides services to individuals with autism and similar neurological development issues. And they've filed an application with the Commissioner of the Revenue to seek a tax exemption for certain personal property that they have. Under the statute, the local governments by ordinance are empowered to either grant or not to grant any such requests. But because it's done by ordinance, a public hearing is required. So we are come to the board today requesting the public hearing be set. There is a typo in the board report. The earliest that this could be said would be March 24th, not February 24th, because we need with the change of the law and notice requirements for ordinances, we have to have our first notification has to be 28 days from the time of the public hearing. I'm open if there's any question regarding this application or the issues of the tax exempt granting tax exempt ordinances. I'm able to answer any questions the board may have. And just to make it clear, it's my position that the board is required to set up public hearing, because once the application is in place, for due process reasons, they have the statutory right to seek this, and I believe the board must at some point schedule a public hearing to hear the application. The application was originally filed September 30th of last year, so it's been pending for a while.
I think my biggest concern is I don't feel that we have a policy on this. I feel that we need to make a decision countywide. And I'm very uncomfortable with doing one, as they come in the door without setting up some kind of policy.
And from a legal point of view, I mean, I agree on the policy would be helpful as guidance. From a legal point of view, each of them do have to be considered individually, though. So, so even if we set a general policy, we would still have to consider any applications we were put in place. Though the policy would be a reason to either accept or reject applications.
Currently, with nonprofit organizations, we don't exempt any personal property, correct?
Yeah, historically, I found none that have been exempted, and I believe it was only 8 organizations since 2026 have been granted exemptions for real estate.
But regardless, you're saying we have to have a public hearing.
We do, when an application is put in place, we need to have a public hearing. They have the legal right under statute and under the Constitution to seek a determination by the local government.
I move that we set a public hearing for March 24.
Thank you, Mr. McDaniel. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
And I vote yes. Now we'll move on to the review of the draft bylaws for the Board of Supervisors. Mr. Dryden.
Before we move on, should we get with you, Mr. Dryden, about our preferences for the nonprofit tax exemption?
What I'll do then is I'll reach out to each of you individually to see what the thought is, and if there is a will among the board to, and actually you could direct me now, if you do want a policy put in place, I could prepare a draft policy, or if you have anything right now to share with me on any thoughts, we can either do it in this meeting or I can reach out to you individually to get what your thoughts are, whatever makes you more comfortable.
Well, listen to anybody, but my initial thoughts is we have never granted this exemption, and I'm not sure why we would at this point for personal property.
Yeah, and you do know the numbers which are in the board report, they're not insubstantial if the value of vehicle is high. So that's, if you notice, I did provide board members a table which shows the amount of exemption even on real estate. And these numbers are somewhat similar to some of the real estate exemptions that were granted. So that's It is, and I did provide we had a board meeting on this in, I believe it was the beginning of December last year. And I provided the board report from that as part of your package today. And that does go over the issues, the questions that the board must consider whether to grant or not grant this. So, and I'll forward that again to you prior to the meeting in March. But the determination should be based on those questions, and there's a catch-all for any other thing, but the board is clearly, and because it's being done as an ordinance, any determination is clearly within the power of the board, is what they consider to be correct or incorrect. You're not required to grant it, and you're not required to deny it. It's totally up to the board.
So are you comfortable with reaching out to Mr. Dryden? If each of us, if we have to reach out so that he can develop policies that would be in line with a way forward for us. Gentlemen?
Yes.
That's enough on that. We can move on to the review of the draft bylaws. Mr. Dryden.
And just to be clear at the beginning, these are just draft bylaws that you're under no obligation to accept bylaws. It's just that from my research, which was not done formally, so I can't give the exact number, but from my research, it seems the large majority of local governments in the Commonwealth do have bylaws. And from my experience on many boards, I believe it's a good policy to have bylaws. And the reason why I think it's policy I've outlined in the board report. One of the main things is to make clear to all board members is what generally the rules, how things are operating. We have a board now which seems to operate quite smoothly. In the future, we don't know how that might be, so it's good to set up bylaws. Which the view of this is not necessary for this board per se, but to set the policies and understandings for going forward in the future. And also one of the benefits is it does make it clear to the public what the rules are, which the board operates under. So this would be a public document posted on our website if it's approved. I do have a summary of the bylaws that are attached here. I did put, to say more broadly, I put in whatever I thought might be of interest to the members of the board. So it's not, so the language is actually in the bylaws. I'm not recommending that you accept everything that's there. It's put there for the purpose to generate thoughts and ideas. Additional things could be added to the bylaws that you think are necessary. I'll highlight some specific things to keep in mind. They're a little bit different than how we currently operate. We do at the beginning of the bylaws in the preamble, we make a point that these are just guidelines. So the board does have the power to operate contrary to the bylaws if they feel that is necessary for any particular reason. And the fact that the board doesn't follow the bylaws directly at all times would not create any substantive right, which means nobody could sue us for not following the bylaws. And that's well established also under the law. We state that we follow the Freedom of Information Act, which is clear. We always do that, but I think it might be good to have it in the bylaws. The confidentiality and privilege, that language there is basically part of the behavior that board members are expected to follow. And it basically states, and as you notice at the end, it does say that the board may sanction or censure any of its members who reveal things that should be considered confidential. And so the board has the right to determine, the board, in the case of attorney-client privilege, any issues that I discuss with the board, it's the board's determination whether or not that information is released, not mine, no one else's. And so if any board member were to release that, then it does create a right to censure that member. Under statute, the board has the right to censure or to fine any of its members. That's under 15.2 1400 allows the board to do that. And there is, as we get into this, there's another section which deals with board member behaviors. We do grant the right, make clear what the chair's rights are, which I think is generally following what we already do, except for if you notice on the second page, we have option 1 and option 2. And this is whether the chair has the right to make a motion and second a motion without passing the gavel on. Option 1 is what we currently do. So if the board were to make a motion, if the chair were to make a motion, the chair now passes the gavel to the vice chair or another member before making that motion. Under Robert's rules, when you operate in a small committee, the chair has under Robert's rules, the chair has the right to make motions. So we just put that down as option 2. And so that's just something to consider, whether we want to continue to do what we do or whether we want to adopt the Robert's rules standard, which allows the chair to fully participate. The chair has certain rights with appointing to committees. We already do that, so that's similar to what we do now. If you go on page 3 for agenda, that's substantially similar to what we do now, but it just makes it clear. So it says that the agenda is set by the clerk and working with the chair, but that it does state that any member can add an item to the agenda, going through the process of providing the information with 3 days notice. That's I'm not quite sure actually if that's what we do right now, but this is some language we took from other bylaws and can be included or not included. We do have the language on citizens comment, which generally follows what our rules are for citizens comment now, but makes it actually clear by having it in the bylaws. So it makes it easier to enforce, in my opinion. At any time while I go through this, if anybody has questions, feel free to stop me and discuss things in detail. Article 5 on page 4, quorum, that's generally what we follow now, follow statute. Article 6, voting in meetings, is generally what we do now. We follow a roll call vote for all of our votes. However, there is a line in here also about making motions. And so there's 2 options depending on which we want to do, where the chair can make a motion or not make a motion. There we have the language there.
Can I back up? When you say
Yes.
3 days, you mean 3 business days? So on a Thursday before a Monday meeting, somebody
That's,
can ask to put something on an
well,
agenda?
that's what we have. We can add that, we can change the dates, but that's the date by statute required to publish the agenda. So that's why that's there, but we can change that. if necessary.
I think for staff and for, I think that's not enough time for our staff to deal with things on the agenda, but we can all go over this in more detail later.
Currently, the way this board has operated since I've been here is the chair sets the agenda. I will make recommendations for agenda. If a board member would like to add something to an agenda, they speak with me and I can speak with the chair, or they can speak with the chair directly. And then it's just kind of a logistical thing about how much time it takes. If it's a very detailed item that would take more time for the board report, the chair might set it off to the next meeting or might have a discussion with another board member, however it works. But right now, it does run through the chair.
Right. And I think it's important for everybody to have input on what's on the agenda, but it is a staffing and a timing issue, so we can.
And one thing that which I didn't do yet, but what will happen if you direct us to move forward with preparing a more final version, is to actually have Mr. Suter as the clerk to actually go through everything, add his suggestions or other things. So
Very good idea.
the idea behind this is you'll provide directions for us. What I'll ask is at the end of this is whether you want me to go ahead and prepare a more finalized version for consideration of the board, and that will then go through a process within the county management to make sure it's done in a way, and then also be shared with all of you prior to the final the day when we consider it. So hopefully will be the consensus among everyone before it's presented. So the voting at meetings follows, just states the rules that we've already adopted for, whether we have added adjournment, if there's a motion, if a motion passes in a meeting or fails in a meeting, and up until the next following meeting, someone who votes in someone who votes on the winning side can bring this up for reconsideration. And that's a policy we've already adopted. And we also have the failure of motion is a denial of the failure of motion to approve is a denial. And that's also something we adopted fairly recently. So we just have the language in there. The meetings language follows pretty much what we already do. We have our organizational meeting, regular meetings, work sessions are stated in there as we already do that. As on page 6 goes on through that further, and this follows mostly what we already do and what's in statute, and has language as to how we do our special meetings. Page 7, Article 8, electronic participation meetings. That goes through page 9, and that's exactly what we've already adopted. It's included in the bylaws because it's bylaws and procedures. We don't have to include it in the bylaws. It could stand as it does now, as a standalone procedure. My suggestion would be to put it in the bylaws just so this document can be approved in the organizational meeting of every year and have it all together one thing. But we can change that according to your preferences. Page 9, we have the language in public hearings, which is generally what we follow anyway, but it does make it clear that on the paragraph close to the bottom, the chair may order the expulsion of a person who violates the rules, and that's during anyone who's during the meetings. It provides some language also on the during public hearings, it's 3 minutes times and things of that nature. And it also makes clear that the chair has the discretion as to how these meetings are run and can vary from these rules if the chair deems necessary. Article 10 is something that's is new. It's decorum, and this is decorum relating to members of the board. And that's basically, it states the standards. It's almost like a code of conduct for the board. We can modify or change this or delete this article if you're not comfortable with it, but it does make it specific that if does grant the chair and the board as a whole the right to censure members who fail to comply with the general rules of decorum that are listed here. And it doesn't specifically state fine. I did not go ahead and include the language of fines in there because it's not been the practice of the board to do fines. The anticipation of these bylaws, it would just be a censure motion. But if desired, we could include language of fines, or even if they're not listed in here because it's statutory right for the board to do so, that could be some of the tools that the board could use to enforce decorum among its members. Article 11's attendance basically states, similar to what we do now, that every member who's not going to attend use their best efforts to notify the chair beforehand that they won't be there. And then amendments, Article 12 just states that this document can be amended by the board. So does anyone have any questions or thoughts they'd like to discuss during this meeting? Or I'm happy to discuss it. This is an ongoing process. There's no rush to get this done, but it's an ongoing process, so we can take time to consider if other ideas come up over the next several weeks.
Gentlemen, how would you like to proceed with this discussion? Individual discussion with Mr. Dryden, kind of directing how you'd like to see this go?
And all I'm asking for today is just the general direction. If the board at this stage feels that they do not want to adopt the bylaws, just to let me know, and then we'll not move forward with it. But if you'd like to see us move forward, it's just at the early stages of moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, there's not any timeline to get this done.
I would like to move forward with it. I mean, with adjustments. Again, it's guidelines. It's not.
Did I hear you correctly say that even though if we went the road of adopting these, wouldn't necessarily have to follow? I mean, what's the point in adopting them if you're not going to follow them?
Well, I think the point of adopting is that they do serve as a general guideline. They make it clear what can and can't be done by the board. But it still is, I think it's important that the board has the ability to vary from the bylaws if required. The language in here would be that the board would make a motion to vary from the bylaws. But the main part I include language in there that this wouldn't create a substantive right, because I don't want, there's no need to put a higher standard than the statute requires for people to be able to sue the board. So I think the standard that the board has to follow is a statutory standard. These they do serve as guidelines, just like Robert's rules, or step above Robert's rules, guidelines of how you're going to do it. I think it does provide, one of the best benefits I see from this is to be able to have the board set the standards which they consider the proper decorum for its members and proper actions. And then number two, which I think is even more important, is to have something published for citizens, because there have been a lot of questions from citizens. And so I've been the county attorney as to what is the proper procedure and is the board following its procedures. By having something published, it makes it even clearer that I can tell them, no, for example, I think you all recall that we were pushed quite heavy on not following the Roberts rules for certain things. And I had to spend a lot of time explaining to certain citizens that we are not bound by Roberts rules. Having something that says it specifically and clearly is helpful. And that's part of the reason why I would put the language for not being bound by the board is expected to follow its bylaws, but is not required to do so. And why I think that's an advantage is that it enables the board a certain level of flexibility if some things happen not necessarily in accordance with the bylaws. But it would, for example, if there were to be a board member who were to act in an appropriate manner, which isn't the case with the current board, but if there were to be one down in the future, it does make it clear what the rights are. Well, otherwise, I don't think there's any rules in place, so it might be rather difficult to enforce that, for example. So that's the point, but that's a good question. The idea behind this is it sets certain standards that we abide by, but there is the flexibility, the reason to not have to abide by it if for some reason the board feels like they need to act in a different way. But any language in here is subject to change. If the board wants to make it more obligatory, then we can change some of the language. That's clear. Everything in everything in here can be changed.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, I'd suggest that individual board members reach out to Mr. Dryden with concerns or changes they want and maybe give us a red line version that and everything is in there, and then we can put it to a vote.
If it's acceptable to the board, what I'd probably like to do is initially circulate this internally, meet with Mr. Spencer about that, and maybe then circulate the marked up version after meeting with Mr. Spencer. And then y'all can come back to me with any other additional changes which you might think would be necessary.
I'm not rushing it.
Well, no, as I mentioned, if you want a deadline in this, feel free to set a deadline. I'm happy to abide by it, but there is no rush. I mean, we have no reason to adopt this except for if you consider it
Are
to be
these
good governance.
common for localities?
Yeah, the majority, I have not found a locality which does not have the bylaws, but I'm not saying they're not out there because I didn't make a table and follow. But the vast majority of the ones I've sought, do have bylaws, which in my view is the best practice for governance. I think both whether it's a government board or whether it's a corporate board or charitable board, having bylaws is almost, I don't know of a board that doesn't have bylaws.
If we were to move forward and adopt at some point, how would it impact other committees or boards that we establish or set up? Would they have to figure out their own set of bylaws, or could they?
There's actually language in here about committees where it says that committees by their nature are supposed to be more free flowing. However, it does empower the chairs of the committees to impose the rules that the board has adopted if there's any problem. So if you have a committee, if you're a chair of a committee and for some reason, and I don't think it'd be the case in our current committees, but you do have the flexibility of creating committees which include citizens or other people. But no, the answer is no. They do not have to follow anything unless the board, when they set it up, imposes the obligation to follow them. Right now, the intention is committees, especially committees, are expected to be more free flowing. Now, you could ask other organizations like Planning Commission or anything else to adopt bylaws if you want them to, but that's up.
That's what I was getting at. You know, boards are not necessarily our committees, but the boards that we establish by putting citizens on. You've got Planning Commission, you got EDA,
Yeah.
you know, different ones like that. Would they, since they are formed by us putting the citizens on, would they have to?
No, they don't have to. They don't have to do that. And I actually haven't looked to see whether there's any legal prohibition from you forcing them to do so. I don't know if that's the case or not. I know certain ones like EDA have, you know, statutory structure associated. So I don't have an opinion whether you could or could not require them to do so. But my general view is that most of the standing councils or other ones that include citizens, the board could require them to adopt bylaws, but by adopting this, you are not requiring them to do so. That's still flexibility for the board to determine if they want them to or not. Assuming that there's no statutory prohibition, which I haven't looked at this point.
All right. Is there anything?
Was that a motion from you, Danny?
No, that was a suggestion.
Suggestion? I like that suggestion. Anybody have a different suggestion? If not, we'll go with Dan's suggestion. All right. Are you okay with it?
Let's read the
All right.
bylaws. It's okay.
Very funny. Okay, we will then move on to appointments. Nomination of Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission's Executive Committee, Mr. Suter.
Yes, we just received this last week. It's an annual, I believe it's an annual appointment. I think Supervisor Lewis, it is annual.
I believe so, yes, sir.
I think it is. Anyway, the letter is attached.
But it's not always every jurisdiction is involved annually.
Correct. This is a nomination for eligibility to election on the CSPDC's executive committee.
For which I and Mr. Sladen would be able, and I would like to nominate Mr. Sladen. Having discussed it with him, and he said he would like to do it, so.
All right, so that's your motion.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Are there any monthly staff reports? Questions or comments? Or a motion to accept our reports or these staff reports?
So moved.
All right, Mr. Lewis, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Any other board comments or committee updates? Not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Do we,
That was from last time.
Is it, I'm sorry, Mr. Lyons, was that your motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and I vote yes.